I remember my first real job, right? Not the college job, but the first time I'm working at least 40 hours a week and being paid according to a pay scale that's not based on no experience. And I remember I got this 2-week paycheck and it had 3 full digits in it. And I'd had 3-digit paychecks before, but this was a much, much bigger 3-digit number. Didn't have a comma yet. Didn't graduate to that. That's what happens when you're an English major in college. By the way, English majors, listen up. You're going to have to hustle. Just want to tell you ahead of time. Spoiler alert, I should have said. But I also remember thinking that even though it wasn't a ton of money, it was a ton of money to me. I thought it was a bajillion dollars. So I went out and I bought stuff. I went out to eat. I made these horrible decisions, and I only later wondered why I was struggling so much to make ends meet. Then later on, fast forward, I own my financial planning company. I'm a budding entrepreneur, young business owner, and a consultant asked me this important question. He said, how much does it cost to turn on the lights every day? What the hell are you talking about? When you come in the day, you got these people that work for you. You've got the utilities. You got all these costs. What did those add up to? Like, what's the minimum amount of money you need to make today? And I thought, what a novel concept. How much do you need to live? And then work backward from that point. Like, who thinks that way? Work backward from how you spend and save. And it was right in front of me the entire time. Absolutely brilliant. Live from the 3-bedroom apartment above Uncle Jack's garage while the basement's being renovated. Hey there, stackers. I'm Joe Saul-Sehy, Average Joe Money on Twitter. And what a show we have for you today. Like every Monday in the morning, we're going to go over not one, but 2 headlines ripped from the financial press. Don't worry, we didn't hurt them too much. But we ripped them from the financial press, and we're not only going to read them like some shows do. We're also going to tell you how they may affect your money and your decision-making. And that's the concept of the show. Money in the Morning is brought to you by Tiller. Tiller is my favorite way to track money. When it comes to Tiller, the reason I like it is because it can be easy, or you can get every single number in history. You know why? Because Tiller, when it comes down to it, is based on spreadsheets. And so if you're a spreadsheet nerd like mom, or you're not a spreadsheet nerd at all like me, you can either press the easy button on spreadsheets with pre-made templates and make it as simple as you'd like, or you can have charts and graphs and schedules to your heart's delight. StackyBenjamins.com/Tiller, Tiller, for more. All right. We got a great show today. 2 fantastic pieces. So Laura, why don't you get this party started?
Here come 2 headlines ripped from the financial press. Only at Money in the Morning.
Bad news for people making not much money out of college like I was, or maybe you're not even out of college. Maybe you just feel underpaid. This is from USA Today, written by Paul Davidson. A whopping 62% of jobs don't support middle-class life after accounting for cost of living. That's an ugly number, isn't it? Let's dive in. Esther Akutana, who lives in Brooklyn, New York, has a good job as a public relations specialist that pays more than $50,000 a year. But because of the $1,440 a month rent on her studio apartment in the Prospect Lefferts Gardens neighborhood, she never takes vacations, dines out just once a month, and scrapes together dinner leftovers for lunch the next day. Quote, I'm so frustrated with the fact that I'm not going to be able to save anything because my rent's so high, said Adekuna, who says she's 30-ish. I like how she says she's 30th. I can see that discussion. How old are you? I'm 30-ish. I don't even know if I can afford to have children. she says. Despite an unemployment rate that's reached a 50-year low of 3.7%, most jobs across the U.S. don't support a middle class or better lifestyle, leaving many Americans struggling, according to a new study. 62% of jobs fall short of the middle class standard when factoring in both wages and the cost of living in the metro area where the job's located, according to the study by Third Way, a think tank that advocates center-left ideas. That's a shock. Quote, there's an opportunity crisis in the country, says Jim Kessler, Vice President of Policy for Third Way and editor of the report. It explains some of the economic uneasiness and, frankly, the political uneasiness, even amid the most robust U.S. economy and labor market since before the Great Recession of 2007 to 2009. A slight majority of Americans, 52%, do live in middle-class households, according to recent annual reports by Pew Research Center, and another 20% or so live in upper-income households. But that's because they're juggling multiple jobs, for example, or relying on investments and inheritance or other household members who may have higher-paying jobs. The piece goes on from there, and if you'd like to read more of it, I will have it on my Twitter feed at Average Joe Money. This is interesting to me. Not from a political discussion, not interested in that at all. Not interested also in people taking jobs that they can't afford. I like this discussion. I like the discussion that a recent guest of ours talked about. Understand the way things are, know that that's where they are, and then act accordingly. If you're somebody who has a $50,000 a year job, this is horrible. You have to live a $50,000 a year lifestyle. And what's frustrating is, I mean, we have this woman who lives in Brooklyn and the rent is high. And obviously she has a job there. And this is frustrating for people to hear. This idea of a side hustle, of a second job isn't something you can just say, yeah, maybe, I don't know. If that's what jobs pay right now, $50,000, a side hustle is mandatory. I mean, when I had tons of credit card debt in college, and this isn't going to be I walk both ways to school in 6 feet of snow without any shoes discussion. Maybe it will be a little bit. Maybe it will be. But I had two choices. I could complain about my debt, or I could go take a job that was in the middle of the night, which for me was delivering papers. Didn't pay well, but you know what? It paid enough to get my debt paid off and to get things back under control again. And if you feel like your life is under control, you've got two ways you can go about this. Way number one is the political fight. Everybody should go vote. You should go vote. But there's this great concept, and I know I quote this book all the time, but if you haven't read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, man, you're missing out. Well, maybe if you listen to this long enough, you'll get all of them because I continually quote the book here. But 3 pods. There's things that you have no control over, things you have some control over, and places where you have all the control. And the author, Stephen Covey, says, spend most of your time in what's called pot 1, which is things that you directly control. Spend time there. And you directly control. If you're spending all of $50,000 a year and you're working your butt off, you directly control solutions to that. And they're going to be ugly. They're not going to be what you want. And frankly, I think more people, and maybe this is political, more people need to wake up to the fact that they could be paid more. And you can't just look at the bottom line. Do what I did. Hey, the $50,000, holy cow, that's a lot of money. Well, when you start putting pen to paper, it isn't enough money for this woman in this piece. So underpaying jobs, sure, it's a reality. I mean, study after study shows it's a reality. But spend your time focusing on how you solve your problem. Either live more cheaply or make more money. Those are your two solutions. That doesn't mean, by the way, you don't do that middle bucket. If your feeling is to go out and vote, and obviously, clearly there's a political think tank involved here, then go vote. Everybody should go vote. I can't believe the number of people that don't vote. But staying away from the politics, stay in pot 1. I think that's the lesson here. Let's say hi to everybody who's hanging out with us on Facebook today. We have a crowd that was kind of quiet at first, and now they're getting a little more rowdy. We've got Kimberly here. Hey, Kimberly. Shireen and Paul Vasey are here. Hey guys, the Cash Crunch crew. Cash Crunch Games crew. Kevin is here. Hey, Kevin. Zizi is here. Says Kimberly and Zizi are patiently waiting. It took us a little while to get going today. I needed to begin the feed. If you're watching us on Facebook, we do this live in front of a Facebook audience. If you're not watching us on Facebook, do this live in front of a Facebook audience. And it took us a while to actually begin today because we set up the time ahead of time and it turned out that I wasn't ready to go. So we left the screen up and people waiting. Our friend Mitchell from the Pouch Plan budget is here. Good to see him. Our friend Tom Drake from the Maple Money podcast, who was recently a guest of ours on Stacking Benjamins. That was a fun episode. He's here. John's here. Lori's here. Jamie's here. Kevin writes, build your skill set, start a business on the side, develop passive income sources. Worst case scenario, you'll have an impressive resume and experience when interviewing for better paying gigs. I totally agree with that, Kevin. You can't say enough about training. Training is the key. Giving yourself as much training. It frustrates me so much when I see people say, well, the reason I'm failing at work is because of the fact my boss hasn't trained me. Don't wait for your boss to train you. Who wants to go to work and suck every day? Nobody wants to. Go train yourself. Figure out what it takes to exceed expectations. Forget about expectations even. I should throw that sentence away. Let's start that one over. Do what it takes to excel at what you want to do. And not because of your boss and not even really because of your customer, but because it's who you are. Because if you're going to do something, why not do it well, right? Roll out of bed and make it happen. Kimberly says, I'd like to see Doug's Habits of Slightly Affected People. Wouldn't that be a great book? Doug's Habits, Neighbor Doug's Habits of Slightly Affected People. And for those of you that don't listen to our other show, Stacking Benjamins, go listen to that. You'll find out all about Doug that you want to know. And Kevin says it all starts at the Sizzler. I think that's probably the first chapter of Doug's book. Chloe's here. Hey, Chloe. Chloe says, agreed. Women also need to advocate for themselves and negotiate and search for a job that'll pay them to their highest value. Lots of studies show, Chloe, that men will go and look for a raise. And by the way, not even enough men do this, but women far, and by the way, for a lot of reasons, don't want to rock the boat, want to be a team player. Women far less than men go ask for the raise. And to your point, bam, they need to do that. Paul's here with us. Hey, Paul. Glad you could be here in the live audience. Let's move over to our second piece, which comes to us. This is from the Charleston Gazette-Mail. Not often we get to quote a West Virginia-based newspaper, but how about this? And it's funny because not only is this a West Virginia-based newspaper, it's not about coal. It's actually about solar power. Solar power is something I've always found, well, not just solar. I find all alternative energy solutions pretty exciting. This is a piece by Lauren B. Howley. Says utilities make a power play to strangle solar at homes and businesses. About 8 years ago, my husband and I installed solar panels on our farm in Calhoun County. The panels provide about 35% of our total electricity. In rural areas, power outages are frequent, and it's become common to lose power for many consecutive days. Our solar and battery storage system provides security so that our critical appliances, especially the water pump, which provides household water from the well, and the deep freezer, which provides food that took countless hours to raise and put up, stay operational even when Mon Power's power is out for many days at a time. Our investment is now at risk thanks to Mon Power and Appalachian Power. These utilities are asking the Public Service Commission to drastically reduce the rate at which solar owners are compensated for the power we produce. Currently, Mon Power charges us for all the electricity we consume, even what's produced by our own panels, and pays us back at the same rate for the electricity produced by our panels. That deal, called net metering, is required by the Public Service Commission, and it's the deal we expected to keep receiving when we invested in our panels. The utilities are asking the PSC for permission to purchase solar from homeowners at only 3 or 4 cents per kilowatt hour instead of the retail rate. This would cut the income received by solar homeowners by about 2/3, dramatically lengthening the payback period for our solar investments and making it uneconomical to go solar in West Virginia. In their filing, the utilities say they're not opposed to, quote, grandfathering existing net metering customers for a limited number of years from the date of installation of their customer generator facility, their solar facility, as they may have installed equipment based on a believed all-in retail rate offset. Most customers do not install based on this premise, but there could be some. To the contrary, I and all of the other solar homeowners I know in West Virginia have installed solar systems based on the premise that we will receive a fair price, the retail price, for our electricity from the utility company. Receiving this fair price, quote, for a few years, followed by over a decade of receiving a much lower price for our solar power, is not an appropriate way to treat homeowners who make good faith investments in solar. This filing comes as part of a case in which the Public Service Commission has proposed some minor changes to the existing net metering rules. The Commission's changes, which primarily relate to making sure net metering customers pay for any upgrades to their electric meter required to install solar, are designed to make sure that these costs are not borne by non-solar customers. This makes sense. In contrast, the utilities proposal is designed to strangle the solar industry in West Virginia in its infancy. Even though less than 0.01% of electricity in the state's generated by residential solar, the utilities are intent on preserving their monopoly. They know that their proposal would destroy the economic viability of residential solar and create an enormous disincentive for anyone considering installing solar panels on their roof. By the same token, the proposal would wipe out the growing job market for solar system installers who are West Virginia small business owners and create small jobs for other West Virginians. The piece goes on and becomes more political at that point. But there's a reason why I bring this up. I bring this up not completely for the solar versus other types of power consideration. But I do want to start there first. It seemed very clear to me in the infancy of solar and as solar got rolling, and even as we've seen solar change, where it's become much more affordable now than it was before. There's a lot of people, by the way, using preconceived ideas about solar that were true maybe a decade ago that aren't true anymore. Solar is much more of an open platform now. Solar is much more easy to install. The system is much better, and you're seeing the prices come down a lot on solar. So keeping up with these alternative energies from what you originally thought, I think is a good idea when it comes to deciding which utility you use. But I don't want to really talk about that. What I want to talk about is this idea. Oh, and before we get to that, are the utility companies making a power play here? Yes. I absolutely think that they are. And what's funny is because it's 0.01% of the people out there that use solar, most people don't really care. So this is an issue where they can definitely step in, and there is no incentive for a utility company to not control that monopoly. I mean, think about if it were you. You're controlling it all. You've got this emerging technology which might eat your lunch. Are you going to do everything? I mean, looking at cars and car production, the big three in the U.S., if you look at the history of the big three versus other auto manufacturers that have come around, even just look at Tesla and how many times the big three have taken Tesla to court and tried to block them and successfully block them. I mean, for a long time in many states, you couldn't buy a car in that state because the states had passed laws that were because of the auto lobbies. Auto lobbies made sure that competition stayed out of their backyard. So do I believe all that? Yes. But that's not the reason I want to bring this up, guys. All that being what it is, the big thing here is this. I answer questions all the time financially, and I see people ask questions on the internet of people financially, and I'm going to go ahead and go down this road. Why the hell you have a financial situation and you go to a forum of people who don't know you, and Earl in Peoria Earl doesn't know crap about you, and Earl gets to weigh in on what he thinks about you using a Roth IRA when he knows zip about you, is not the way any successful person ever manages their money. But another non-successful thing is this. Assuming that the rules are going to stay the way they were when you created whatever your situation was, I think is also incredibly dangerous. You have to look at the rules and play by the rules the way they are now, and then think about, if the rules change, how do I mitigate that? How do I make sure and minimize the risk to me and everything I'm trying to accomplish? So people that say, put all your money in a 401k and forget the Roth, or put all your money in a Roth and forget the 401k, or shove as much money as possible into an HSA, are assuming that the rules are going to stay the same. That's a monster flipping mistake. It was a mistake of this woman when it comes to solar to think that the rules were going to stay the same, where utility companies were going to pay retail price. Do you think they were? I mean, now that they're pushing back against that, just back up a second. Do you think the utility companies weren't going to push back and say, no, we want to pay you less? We've seen it everywhere else in our life. Of course it was going to happen. So I think it's incredibly dangerous. It is incredibly dangerous to assume the rules are going to stay the same. And I see people spew this stuff in online forums nonstop. Well, you should do this because it's the best way now. And no. Just because it's the best way now doesn't mean it's going to be the best way forever. If you're playing with a set of rules that a government or an institution, an insurance company, whatever, if you go into a mutual fund that's actively managed, assume that the manager is going to get fired and there's going to be some other manager coming on. If that's the case, how do we mitigate against that? If you have a passive fund, assume that the expenses are going to change at some point. If that happens, what do you do? And if you build those contingencies in ahead of time, assume that the Roth IRA isn't always going to be tax-free, or that there might end up being some issues there. What do you do then? Tax diversification, I think, makes a lot of sense. Diversifying your assets makes a lot of sense. I think all those are really important. Man, that was a ranty, wasn't it? I got ranty right there. All of a sudden I realized I'm way up on my soapbox now. So congratulations. You got to hear that. Let's say hi again to everybody who's hanging out with us on Facebook. And they've gotten very quiet. And I think because of the fact that I'm ranty right now. Paul's here with us. He got here at the halfway point, I think. Paul, it's about time you got here. So thanks a ton. Hey, in just a second, we're going to put both of these two pieces together in what we call the big idea. The big idea is where we say, okay, when it comes to the solar power argument and these jobs that don't pay enough to live a middle-class lifestyle, how do we put those together into one big idea we can take home? We're going to do that next. But first, I want to spend a little bit more time talking about our sponsor, Tiller, because your finances in Tiller automatically updated in Google Sheets and Excel every day. And 83% of Tiller customers, I love this stat, 83% of Tiller customers say they're more aware of where their money's going. I use Tiller. I'm not sure if you're the other 17%, how you don't know. Like how you use Tiller and you're the person who goes, I still don't know. Maybe it's because you use it and you don't look at it. That's got to be the only way. People use Tiller to track their spending from all their accounts in one spreadsheet. So whether it's your bank account, if you've got multiple bank accounts, if you've got a savings account over here, you've got your investments over here, you press a button, it all downloads into Tiller. And then here's the cool thing. No matter what type of program you like, it's always available on Tiller. Whether you're like mom and you like it complicated and you like every schedule and to know every detail, that's great. Or you're like me, you just want a quick overview. Tiller not only lets you do that because it's based on spreadsheets and you can personalize it to your heart's delight, or they also start off with lots of templates. stackingbenjamins.com/Tiller for more. And the great thing is if you use our link, you're going to get to try it for free. So check out Tiller using our link, and I think you'll be happy. And obviously, it gives you a chance to kick the tires if you're going to try it. And by the way, if you use our link, that helps the show. So thanks to everybody. If you're going to try Tiller, please use our link. All right, let's talk about the big idea here. How do we take this idea of jobs not paying high enough to live a middle-aged lifestyle and this idea that utilities might be stealing our lunch and put them together? Another book I like I not only like and quote, this might be my second most quoted book. Another book I like is called The Art of War. And it's this ancient Chinese book about war and about battles. Art of War about war? Imagine that, Joe. Yes, it is. Spoiler alert there too. But when it comes to the art of war, and I know these analogies don't work with everyone, but they really fit me. One of the tenets in the book says the best battle is the one that's never fought. And I live by that tenet. I love that tenet. And I'm going to talk about that another day. But today I want to focus on this other idea in the book, which is define your battlefield. Deciding when and how you fight is a huge part of whether you win that fight or not. And it's funny because when I see people just lose in a big way, I think most often it was clearly because they didn't define the battlefield ahead of time. Like as an example, having a political discussion on Facebook, that's a good idea. Said nobody ever, right? I mean, you that's not the battlefield to talk politics. It's not. And yet people continually do it. So defining your battlefield, I think, is the key thing that ties these two together. Deciding when and how you fight, you're then able to make the most impact. If you focus on what you can control, remember we talked about pot 1, pot 2, pot 3 earlier, focusing on pot 1 things, what you can control, and controlling that when it comes to your job. Sure, it might seem like a lot of money when you look at the offer, but if you take that job, and you should also be plotting about how to do better and about how much money it's going to cost you to live at the same time. What does it cost to keep the lights on? And that's not all. When it comes to power companies cutting the amount they pay, maybe that's where you fight back by raising awareness and by going into the public awareness system, whether it's the ballot box, whether it's getting the word out through media, whatever it might be. But knowing that might be an issue before you buy the solar unit means it should be baked into your thinking ahead of time. I think that's our big takeaway today, guys. Define your battlefield. My battlefield's done for today, kids. We'll see you next time back here at Money in the Morning.
Money in the Morning is created by Joe Saul-Sehy and comes to your ears because of the collective genius of our producer, Richie Rutter-Reese, engineer, Caden Thompson, and a pack of very well-trained ferrets here in the basement. You'll find links to all of our headlines featured on today's show in Joe's Twitter feed at @AverageJoeMoney. I know you already know this too, but Money in the Morning is for entertainment purposes only. You shouldn't act on anything recommended by a bunch of entertainers in a basement without first consulting with your financial advisor and second, having your head examined. Have a headline you'd like us to discuss? Send them to joe@stackingbenjamins.com or put them on our Stacking Benjamins Basement closed Facebook group. This show is copyright 2018 Stacking Benjamins LLC, all rights reserved. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor Doug, and I reserve the right to always say, we'll see you next time back here on Money in the Morning.